So I just came across some breaking news, and that is that Naoya Inoue will be making his next defense of his WBO super flyweight title, 115-pound championship, against Ricardo Rodriguez on May 21st in Tokyo, Japan. Also on that card is going to be Akira Higashi, three-weight champion and current IBF light flyweight champion, defending his title against Milan Melindo, current IBF interim champion. They awarded Melindo an interim championship after he defeated Terupangu Taida, aka Falan Sakridin Jr. And he was basically the mandatory. They weren't sure if Higashi was going to move back up to 112 or even possibly 115, so they awarded an interim belt in the possibility that Higashi would no longer be fighting at 108 pounds. But it looks like he's going to be fighting Melindo. Good mandatory fight for them two. With regards to Naoya Inoue, he's going to be fighting Ricardo Rodriguez, fighter from Mexico, who probably two of his biggest fights at the very least were against David Carmona. Actually lost both of them. Both were very close fights though. First one was a unanimous decision that actually appeared on Telemundo. You can actually look it up. The full fight is on YouTube here. Actually, I might link it in the description too. Him versus David Carmona in the first fight. The second fight doesn't appear to be uploaded online, unfortunately. But I mean, Ricardo Rodriguez is a pretty good fighter, pretty solid fighter. Basically fought evenly against David Carmona, who of course Naoya Inoue has already defeated. So while this is a little bit of a step back in terms of just overall name value for Naoya Inoue, as opposed to some of the guys that he was calling out and some of the guys that he had even made offers to recently. You know, he had previously for the New Year's card outside of Kohei Kono, he was looking to try and fight the IBF super flyweight champion Joanna Kaz, as well as the guy that was at the time the WBA champion Luis Concepcion, who of course has since been deposed by Khalid Yafai. But with regard to Naoya Inoue, however, this wasn't the only news that was breaking. Basically, it has been announced that he's going to be making his United States debut in September. It's unknown exactly as to who he's going to be fighting, if he's going to be defending his 115-pound title, if he's going to be potentially making a unification against the likes of a Joanna Kaz. They've tossed his name in that mix as a potential opponent for his debut in the United States, or if he'll be moving up to bantamweight, as has been rumored, and they're saying that there's a possibility that he either may fight a non-title fight for his bantamweight debut, his brand new division, fighting basically a warm-up opponent essentially, or if he'll be going after Zanat Zakionov. Zakionov, who some of you may remember, recently just defeated Rashid Warren. Really good fight. Became the first fighter trained and I believe managed or promoted by Ricky Hatton to become a world champion. So the first Hatton fighter to become a world champion. Had a very gutsy effort against Rashid Warren. Came back from 2 knockdowns in the first round to pretty much bust up, dropping. I don't think there was actually an official knockdown in that fight, if I'm remembering correctly. But he dropped Rashid Warren on his way to pretty much beating him up and taking his belt in Warren's own hometown. Wasn't a good day for the Natty at all. But it was a good day for Zakionov, and it looks like in September there's the possibility that Naoya Inoue will be looking to make it a good day for himself, as he might be going up and fighting Zakionov. Zakionov, who personally I consider the second best fighter in the bantamweight division. I'd put him right behind Shinsuke Yamanaka for the way he was able to pretty much manhandle Rashid Warren. The only other guys that I figure could potentially oppose him for that ranking really would be somebody like a Laborio Solis, who of course basically got robbed against McDonald recently, Jamie McDonald. I thought Solis pretty much handled him and beat him up and should have won that fight. And Juan Carlos Payano, a guy who defeated Rashid Warren once before, wound up losing to him in the second fight. Both fights were somewhat controversial. I thought he won both fights personally, so I could definitely see him being the number 2 guy in the division. But basically in Zakionov, you got a guy that's no worse than really top 4 in the division. So I think that's a good fight. As for Ricardo Rodriguez, not the most inspiring fight. I've been saying recently that I'd like to see Naoya Inoue fight somebody like a Juan Francisco Estrada. To me, if he's looking to become like the big boss at super flyweight or at the lower weight classes in general, defeating somebody like an Estrada, a guy who a lot of people will make the argument, me not necessarily entirely, but a lot of people will make the argument that Roman Gonzalez, at the very least, if not has been ducking him, has been basically kind of carefully managing to navigate around somebody like Juan Francisco Estrada rematch against the man who gave him one of his toughest fights, one of his most difficult fights at the very least, especially in a technical sense. I'd say that Cuadras tested Gonzalez a bit more physically, and to a certain degree, so did Cesar Kitso Rungvisai. But in terms of just technical ability, Juan Francisco Estrada was the one guy that was able to really just hang with Gonzalez in terms of boxing ability. I would have rather liked to see a fight like that. But Rodriguez, as I said, is a fighter that had two very close fights with David Carmona, who actually gave Cuadras a pretty tough out recently, and gave Naoya Inoue a reasonably tough fight as well. I thought it was a 9 rounds to 3 type fight for Naoya Inoue. Carmona's, I thought, probably did better than any other Inoue opponent ever has. And that's including Ryuichi Taguchi, who's current champion at 108 pounds, back when Inoue was 108 pound, or just before Inoue was 108 pound champion. That time, that was for the Japan domestic light flyweight title. But I think this is pretty good news, though. It's good to see Inoue going to continue making a defense of his title, of course. Ricardo Rodriguez is the number 2 contender for the WBO. Number 1 contender is Rex Cho, and that's a top-ranked fighter. It's unlikely that Bob Arum is going to let Rex Cho anywhere near Naoya Inoue unless they're pretty much overpaying him by an extreme amount for that belt. If anything, Rex Cho is probably going to wait until Naoya Inoue actually leaves the division in order to eventually actually challenge for that title in the first place. Become China's 3rd world champion after Chang Xiaozhong and Zhou Shiming. But basically, to me, this looks like basically Inoue trying to clear out a mandatory, because in light of Rex Cho turning down any offers from Inoue, Ricardo Rodriguez would eventually become his mandatory for the fight in September. And I'm thinking that Ohashi, his promoter, Ohashi Promotions, are thinking that it's better to clear out the mandatory so that they have a better choice of opponent in September, potentially a bigger name or even a unification in September, to make Naoya Inoue's U.S. debut and try and make basically the biggest splash possible and try to get his name on the list and in the mouths and in the minds of everybody that's out there. Kind of similar to when Roman Gonzalez made his HBO debut against Edgar Sosa. That wasn't his U.S. debut necessarily. He had fought a couple of times in the United States before, against Estrada, against Garcia Herrales. And, Edgar Sosa had been a known name previously. At that time, he was a bit on the old side, on the worn out side, rather. But Naoya Inoue against somebody like a German Lakas, I think is a fantastic fight. Against somebody like a Zana Zakianov, it's a fantastic fight. So for Ricardo Rodriguez, in a sense, this is a little bit of kind of a stay busy, but it is also clearing a mandatory in order to make sure that we get the potential for a better opponent should he choose to make another defense of his 115-pound title. And honestly, for me, I would prefer him to stay at 115 and to legitimately try and clear it out and clean it up, because to me there's just too many good fighters at 115, and 115 is, to me, the most packed division in boxing. It's not even just to me. It's analyzing it. The conclusion has to come to that 115 pounds is the most jam-packed division in boxing in terms of just overall ability, skill set, diversity of talent, diversity of different styles in terms of who makes what kind of fight against who, and in terms of actual proven worthiness, guys that have defeated former champions and champions on the rise in the past. Just absolutely packed with talent. And incidentally, this is actually going to come on the heels of another great card. On May 20th, there's going to be a triple header of world title fights with Hassan Ndam Injikam defending his WBA interim title, basically the mandatory position, to fight Gennady Golovkin against Ryota Murata, former Olympic gold medalist from 2012 Olympic gold medalist Ryota Murata, looking like he might be poised to become a mandatory ostensibly for Gennady Golovkin. And I think Murata has a very, very strong chance against Ndam, but I definitely don't count Ndam out. He just scored an absolutely brutal knockout of the year contender this past year, and he's looking kind of angry about what happened to him in the Olympics, and he's looking to pretty much take out that anger on anybody in front of him, and I know that includes Murata. Along with that, there is also going to be 2 other World Championship fights on May 20th. We got Ganaga Lopez, the WBC 108-pound light flyweight champion. Ganaga Lopez defending that title against Ken Shiro of Japan. Ken Shiro, one of these young upstarts from Japan, 9-0 with 5 knockouts. Guy that's looking to basically kind of do some similar things to what Naoya Inoue did, to what Kazuto Ioka did, and to what recently Kosei Tanaka did, and basically trying to get a world title in less than 10 fights. You know, it'd be very impressive if he managed to do so. A very young guy, looking to try and have his entire career ahead of him and try to pull off a bit of an upset against Ganagon Lopez, who really should probably be considered either the number 1 or number 2 fighter at the 108-pound division. So, you know, definitely a big step up for Ken Shiro. Lopez is a very good fighter in his own right. And then along with that is going to be Juan Choritos Hernandez, who of course I made a video on recently, who just recently became the WBC flyweight champion, the title that Roman Gonzalez chose to vacate in moving up to 115 pounds in order to fight the likes of Quadras and Sisaket. Juan Hernandez was the number 2 contender at the time, defeated the number 1 contender, the formerly undefeated Naoya Kana. He's the one that gave him that loss with a 3rd round TKO and what was a fantastic fight between those two. He's going to be coming up against a young and dangerous looking prospect by the name of Daigo Higa of Japan, a man who is 12-0 with 12 knockouts, a bona fide puncher, a bruiser, a guy that's looking to pretty much take you out with every single shot, and a guy that's looking to really put a hurting on Choritos Hernandez. And it's looking like it's going to be a very just a couple of interesting days in Japan. You know, this is almost like a mini type of New Year's card, you know, like the New Year's cards they've been holding in Japan the last few years on December 30th and 31st. Here it's going to be May 20th and 21st. Capped off with Naoya Inoue making potentially the final defense of his title at 115, or at the very least the final fight that he's going to be having in Japan before making his U.S. debut, his U.S. splash. And hopefully we'll be able to see not only him but some of these other fighters from Japan over in the United States more often with this debut. You know, especially the Ohashi Promotions fighters. You know, we've seen a number of Taken promoted fighters, but you know, once we get some more of these promoters from Japan getting into the game and getting into the mix, it might be good. You know, we might be able to see not just Naoya Inoue but his brothers, his brother Takuma Inoue and his cousin Koki Inoue, bantamweight and light welterweight prospects in their own right, and just generally a number of other good fighters. All these fighters that I mentioned are, you know, high level fighters really. You know, Choritos Hernandez, top 3, top 4 level flyweight. Ganaga Lopez, as I said, he's either the best or the 2nd best light flyweight in the world. Ryota Murata, you know, middleweight on the rise. Could potentially see him against somebody like a Golovkin. And matter of fact, I wouldn't actually be surprised to see Naoya Inoue's United States debut come on the same card as a Golovkin versus Murata fight, if Murata happens to beat Hassan Endal. But I mean, that all remains to be seen. We shall see if it takes place. But I'm definitely interested in the news. I'm definitely excited for it, and I'm definitely going to be watching these 2 cards, May 20th and 21st, with a lot of interest, you know, on exactly what's going to be in the future prospects for not just Inoue and Murata as the 2 most likely guys to cross over to the United States, but all the other fighters as well. Choritos Hernandez, a fighter that, you know, I think is a pretty solid fighter. Pulled off a great win earlier this year. Ganaga Lopez, a guy that, you know, I can't really sing the praises of enough. And he's been out recently. He had a couple of injuries, unfortunately. And, you know, Akira Higashi, a guy that, you know, is really a living legend at the lowest weight classes. You know, the fact that he just refuses to go away, has a couple of losses, but, you know, he's still in there in the championship mix. Definitely a lesson in perseverance. But that's pretty much all I got for this video. I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.